Hey guys, today I figured I'd throw together a quick YouTube video to show you guys the new Masterbuilt 440 electric smoker, kind of highlight some of the differences and the things that are new, things you may not have seen on other smokers from Masterbuilt or smokers in general. With that, let's get started. Assembly was very straightforward, took about 30 minutes to put together, everything came with it. I didn't have any fitment issues, everything seemed to go together very well. Some people said that they were getting damage on theirs from the factory. Mine came and looked pretty good, so I don't have any complaints from my end. Whether you've used a Masterbuilt smoker in the past or if this is your first one, you'll find the controls very intuitive and easy to use. It's a clean, simple design and a nice layout. The internal dimensions on this smoker are the exact same as my other 40-inch Masterbuilt smoker has. The one big difference on these racks though is that this has these little brackets underneath that can hold a drip pan, and there's extra adjustability on where that sits for using accessories like the rotisserie, which I'll definitely be covering in another video. Previous generations of Masterbuilt smokers had a chip loader that would drop wood chips into this pan. This pan would just be inserted on top of this element, and that element would control the heat that creates your smoke and the temperature of the smoker. The new 440 smoker has a separate heater for the cabinet and a separate heater that makes smoke through the element. The cabinet heater is centrally located and helps to create a nice even smoke through the entire unit. I also think that the two vents on the top help also. Inside the smoker there's plenty of room. 4 racks, and the top rack even has some adjustability, which is new. Never seen that on a previous model. I placed a temperature probe on each of the shelves inside the unit so I could use an external temperature monitoring system to see how the temperature fluctuates within the unit while it's being used. I also wanted to see if there's any variation from the top shelf to the bottom shelf. Here I had my smoker set to 220 degrees and I left it there for about 3 hours. The temperatures held very, very smooth. It was a little bit off from my set temperature, but I was very happy in the consistency and how little fluctuation there was. Next, I bumped the heat up to see how it would go to 275 degrees. The temperature got up there nice and quickly, and I even ran some food in there, and you can see where the small blue line is where I actually added a pan of chili, and I just set it on top of the probe to get a different reading on there. But you can see how all the probes are very close to each other in the same temperature range. Here you can see the new way to load wood chunks into the smoker. Where the chip tube would normally be, you simply place a chunk of wood inside the access door and it sits on a grate with an element right underneath it. It's a very simple, straightforward design. There you can see the small grate in there. But you do have to be careful on the chunks you use because I did find that some of the chunks did have to be trimmed down a bit to fit in the unit. The opening does measure 3.5 inches by 2 3/4 inches wide. And it was big enough to get most of my chunks in there, but there were a few wood chunks that I did have to break down to get them to fit inside, but that's not a real big issue. I found that adding a nice sized chunk of wood will give you a nice even smoke for about 3 to 4 hours or so. Obviously a little larger the chunk, the more smoke you're going to get. A little bit smaller chunk, you're going to get a little bit less time. Wood chips you can also count on a little bit less. Emptying the tray for the ashes was very simple. Simply pull the tray out, empty it, put it back in. Just make sure you discarded them properly and safely. This smoker gives you the ability to do cold smoking also by running just the burner for the wood chips or chunk by itself. If you turn that on, you can select your smoke mode of 1 through 5, 1 being the lowest temperature and the least I want to smoke, and 5 being the hottest and most intense smoke. Once you find your setting, you lock it in, and you can see the little squiggle there next to the 0, and that lets you know that that burner element is on by itself. Next, you can set the chamber temperature if you're not going to cold smoke. Select your element, select your temperature, lock in your temperature, and you can see a separate icon underneath that smoke feature. And now you know they're both going at the same time. This is different than other Masterbuilts. You don't have to set the time in order to let it start smoking. As long as you can see your icons on there, you know you're going. Your smoker will come with a single temperature probe, but it does have the ability to run more. You'll find spots inside the cabinet that can hold them on either side, 2 on each side of the smoker. To use these, just grab the base of the probe, not on the wire, and pull straight out. One very nice addition to the smoker is an extra vent on top. Now one on each side will let you control the smoke coming out of the smoker a lot easier and help regulate your temperature. Also, the vents are 4 inches instead of a single 3. Gives you a lot better flexibility and more control. I did open up the back of the smoker because this seems to be a fail point of a lot of the older Masterbuilt smokers. Masterbuilt has confirmed with me over a couple conversations that all the wiring in the unit has been in fact upgraded over previous models, so time will tell, but I'm optimistic. On the back of the unit you can see that there's a lot of access to get inside to replace any sensors or maybe control boards that may go out while you own the smoker. The back of the smoker has a nice robust kick plate and it's nice and solid. The previous pellet smoker that I have has a very large flimsy kick plate and that warped over time. I don't see that happening here. Here's a quick picture that you can see that shows what happened mine. It still works fine, but it's bowed out, it was flimsy. Just something that could have been done a little bit differently, a little bit better. It looks like that has been done. I am very fond of this smoker, but there's still a few things that I wish were done a little bit differently, like the glass front. I understand that it looks really nice and it takes some intimidation out of it, especially for people who aren't very seasoned smokers. But for someone like myself who's got a couple young kids or maybe people who have animals, the glass door does get very warm to the touch, and that's the only part of the unit that does get warm to the touch. I also do feel that maybe they'd be able to bring the price point down just a little bit more if they were to just do a solid door on there, which would be a nice option. As I'd mentioned earlier, it does come with one temperature probe. It is expandable to 4 probes, but you only get one in the box. You can buy 3 more as accessories, but I really wish they would at least included 2. It's a very large smoker and it's not going to be difficult or out of the question for someone to need more than one of them while doing a big smoke. There's no way to level the smoker. And no, I don't keep it tucked against my house like this when I use it, but I do slide it straight out on a concrete slab and it is sloped away from my house quite a bit. But there is enough meat on the bottom to where I can drill out a hole and run some screws or bolts through there to level it myself, but I think it would have been a great opportunity for Masterbuilt to include something like that. I want to talk to you guys about safety for just a second. And although you're using an electric smoker with no real flame, there are parts that get really hot. Hot enough to ignite the wood inside of them and start a fire. Masterbuilt tells you in the manual not to use these indoors, so please heed their advice. Just don't do it. I'd like to thank you guys for watching this video and tagging along. If you have any questions about the smoker or any Masterbuilt products in general, please feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to help. Also, if you feel this was a very useful video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and maybe even subscribing to my channel. I want to give a huge shout out to Masterbuilt. Not only did they just send me the smoker, they sent me every accessory that goes with it. I'll be doing separate videos that highlight some of these accessories and also possibly some installation videos on some of them as well. So please keep your eyes peeled, and if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. Again, thanks for watching.